Testing 1 2. Test 1 2. Microphone test. Microphone. Microphone test. This one needs to come up.
I don't need a microphone. I can be heard. All right, then I'll use it. I turn it on. How? Now, how do is it on now? Okay.
They've been around for a while. No, just been this blueberry patch. Weed and water. Got you cool. Huh.
Did you have a part this packet? Okay. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's online.
Hello.
Oh.
All right, we're going to bring tonight's meeting to order. Everyone will please take their place. Turn off all the cell phones. Thank you. Tonight's agenda, we have one case and several other discussions about solar and event venue type issues. But we have a quorum. We're only missing one member, and that is Nan Cuppage. She was supposed to call in, but I understand she won't be able to do that. So, and we have Alan Berry was going to take the minutes. Is he connected? If not, we will move on from there.
Well, it's definitely being recorded for YouTube. So
Thank you. All will depend on that. Okay. First thing on the agenda tonight is how to use the microphones. I think everybody has been instructed that you only have to get about 8 inches to the microphone and you don't have to get right up to it and scream and holler. It's my understanding everybody can hear us just fine. Nathan, welcome. Okay. First thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the August 18th, 2021 meeting. Any comments, suggestions, any concerns, edits, whatever? I have gone through it myself. I'm assuming everybody else has read it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the minutes as read.
Second.
Excuse me, are we going to have a meeting or we're not going to have a meeting? We have to make up our mind what we're going to do here. Okay? All right, I got a motion to approve the minutes of August 18th, 2021. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, thank you for your minutes on the, or your update on the meeting, the board meeting on 9/14. That was very helpful and very informative. Thank you. The first case on the agenda is case number S-10-21-13. Marvin Jenkins and Andrew Gerhardt have submitted a subdivision plat survey to subdivide 3 existing A1 agriculture zone parcels. These parcels are identified on Madison County Tax Map 33-53, 33-54, 33-55, and are roughly 49 acres, 8.4 acres, and 12 acres respectively. Parcel 33-54 is located on the James City Road, Route 612, and contains a dwelling with a postal address of 1460 James City Road. Parcel 3353 is located on James City Road and Hoover Road, Route 609. Parcel 3354 is located on Hoover Road and measured from the edge of Hoover Road, roughly 895 feet. Of parcel 3353 and 3355 are located in Culpeper County. Each parcel is proposed to be subdivided to create 3 new parcels and a residue parcel. The subdivision would create 9 new parcels and 3 residue parcels for a total of 12 parcels. As required in A1 zoning district, all parcels meet the minimum lot requirement of 3 acres. The application itself, the VDOT issues have been resolved, health department issues have been resolved. I don't see anything, any problem with the application myself. I'm sure everybody has read the details of that application. Mr. Webb, do you have anything to add?
No, just to note the private road maintenance agreement, which you talk about a lot here. I think we have a pretty thorough maintenance agreement. Every lot is perked, and this is a by right subdivision. There are 3 parcels that I don't think they've been subdivided for many years. They've been taxed at this rate for these 2 parcels for a long time, well over 10 years. So as far as that goes, they're in good shape. Otherwise, don't really have too many other comments. Anything for me?
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Webb from the Planning Commission? Yes, Pete.
What about do we need to look at it, or has it been addressed? We're going to build a road through the floodplain there across that creek. Is there any issues there?
I guess the first thing is make sure is that creek. Which creek is that?
Crooked Run.
Do you know if that's a map creek or not? Oh, it is. As far as building the road, I mean, you have to get a ENS permit and whatnot. I don't, I mean, I don't know if it will require a bridge to get across Crooked Run, but yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can see the outline of the, I'm sorry, that's Culpeper County, but I do believe I did look at um, the flood map, and I think it kind of comes up there too, if I'm looking correctly. If that's where the creek is, I believe it kind of comes up around the area where the county line is. So any construction would be out of the floodplain. As far as the entrance, I mean, you can put an entrance into the floodplain. That's not an issue. What's that?
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
And
We'll get the option up in a
yeah,
minute.
he can talk. I'll let them talk a little more about it. But as far as building it, I mean, as far as entrance goes, there's no issues with putting an entrance in the floodplain.
Any other questions for Mr. Webb? If not, would the applicant like to come up to the microphone?
So what kind of questions did you have?
Yeah,
There's a,
I don't want to wait till we get to the night of the board meeting or whatever,
Right.
and then somebody asks, coming across the floodplain,
well, as
that's a
far-
name run,
it's a name run, and there's some floodplain, and
or do we need permission to be in there?
well, that's as far as I know, those are existing entrances that are coming in there. So they're whether they cross Crooked Run or not already, I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that question. So
Okay, you are Daniel Clark,
yes, that's right.
okay, the record. Any other questions for Mr. Clark?
I have a question to avoid the problem that Pete's talking about. Is there who would be responsible for researching that? So when we get here next time, we won't have to.
I guess when he's going to have to file for a land disturbance permit with VDOT to get those entrances put in. I think all he has to do is apply for a land disturbance permit to put in the entrance, the roads too. So I guess that's a county question.
Hasn't VDOT already approved these?
Yeah, the VDOT's approved the entrances, but
Right.
as far as building those things, when he goes to build a house, they'll have to get a permit a land disturbance permit to put in the driveway and the house. Most likely it'll be in lieu of a plan because it's resident. So
That would come when the
When they
building
go to-
application
yeah, that would
permit
come
is
with the-
requested.
exactly.
Okay.
So,
All right. On these subdivisions, are there any roads back through there currently? You just
well,
have to
there's there's some trails back in there, but no roads. No.
So if we wanted to go back there and look at all this stuff, we would
is
have
it-
to,
are those roads kind of cleared out so they could walk in there? Yeah, you could do that.
okay,
I think the health department was out there recently and walked around in there too. So they went and took a look at all the drain fields. I don't know if they saw every single one of them, but they took a walk back into the property.
okay.
You might get chiggers, but so, anyway.
A couple of members from the planning commission will be going out there to look at this up front. Do you want us to give you a call first? Okay, that would be good. We could do that. All right. Anybody from planning commission want to step up right now? Join me on that. Don't everybody jump out at once. All right, Mr. Okay. Mr. Carpenter, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? This is one of the biggest subdivisions I think I have seen since I've been on the planning commission. But the application seems very thorough and neat and well done. No more
Thank you.
questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the planning commission on that issue? Well, I do have one other question. On the road maintenance agreement, I have never seen one of these before in an application. I'm assuming everybody out there is going to be all right with this.
There's nothing out there yet.
You're Mr. Gerhardt, right? I see you.
Do you mind coming here so we can hear? Oh, yeah.
Members of the Planning Commission, nice to see you. I'm Andy Gerhardt. I'm here with Marvin Jenkins. I've drafted a road maintenance agreement for the review, for zoning's review. I'm probably going to put some other touches on it. But the way it works, Marvin and I would make that binding on all of the lots that are serviced by the road maintenance agreement. It's just the 4 lots, lots 7, 8, 9, and 10, that would actually be affected by the road maintenance agreement. All the others would either have a shared driveway or their own driveway. But I know that's a big concern of the zoning in the county, to make sure that the private roads are properly maintained. So anytime if we sell a lot to some third party, they would be bound by the terms of this road maintenance agreement, and they would have to join in, and they would automatically, it would run with the land, so they would automatically be bound by the legal terms. Yes, it would be filed along with the deed. Yes.
Well, that certainly is a good thing.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty standard
Yeah.
to do that. And we plan on doing it.
Well, I hope to see more of them in the future.
Okay, well, all
Any other questions, Mr. Gerhardt?
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Mr. Gregg, are you there? Okay, thank you. Just checking. All right. Next item on the agenda, we have 3 items here for discussion and review. First one is a proposed ordinance amendment for the commercial solar energy facility, amend Article 14-93 to reduce the setbacks from 300 feet to 100 feet. I think everybody got Faye's email on exactly how that would be done and the wording on that. It seems pretty simple and upfront. Mr. Red, do you have anything you want to add to that? The amendment?
Mr. Chairman, the proposed decisions are really political questions. I don't see anything in the language of them that it presents any legal issues. It's just a question as to whether the county, wants to reduce these setbacks. It's set forth in paragraph 2.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any comments from the planning commission?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment because I'm not
Yes, Faye,
clear since I prepared this.
thank you.
And with my committee's agreement that when we met, we decided this is the way we thought it would be best. Okay, number 1 was already in the ordinance. We didn't change that on this particular thing. Number 2, what we had said, and Ligon, I suppose your office changed this?
No, this is just what you sent me.
That's not what I sent you. I mean, I don't mean to disagree, but what we had said was that gosh, I wish I had mine. We recommend that the setback minimum be 100 feet, subject to a maximum of 300 feet, depending on the various things. And we had put in that would be addressed under the special use permit, whatever changes were made. Not like this. I mean, and I kept asking questions to make sure that if we did it that way, that could be addressed in the special use permit. Because the committee doesn't know that we necessarily want all, if there were ever any other facilities of this type, that it would be 100 feet. We say here subject to 100, but 300, but we don't say, this doesn't say how that would get changed. It says additional buffering. If that's sufficient, then that's okay.
But one that was proposed to your committee left it up to the Board of Supervisors on a case-by-case basis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And that's the one that will be presented. Okay. Where that one was spared in the woodwork, I don't know. But that
So
was sent
what
forward.
would need to be changed on this?
I don't remember how I had it. I don't remember this. I have to think about this because I didn't
Okay.
see this, but I'll just think about and read it. And if my committee would too, see that the way we presented the first draft was okay or not.
Faye, did you send that, the one that was a formal, would be the formal presentation?
I
to the
didn't.
Board, you sent that to the other members?
You did.
Okay.
Because I did not.
All members of the planning commission, and I think Mr. Gregg and Ligon and Clay Jackson, chairman. So that would be our formal presentation, and what would be, make a recommendation from the planning commission to the board would be on that document, the one that was sent to everybody on the planning commission, and I'm sure everybody has looked at that. Is there any issues or questions in the planning commission on what was presented in that formalized version that would be sent forward to the board?
This may be sufficient. I just don't think it reads exactly like I had it. But anyway, I'm not going to challenge it right now.
What we can do is make sure we got what you sent.
Right.
And this is just what I had, so I didn't.
Well, I mean, I will make sure, and maybe my memory's
It doesn't sound like
failing.
it's radically different.
And the one on number 4, I'll just go ahead and address right now. That does say placement of the fencing shall be specified in the special use permit. So that would depend on all the things we've listed before. So that one looks correct. And I'm not sure we need around the perimeter of the facility that's in block. We may not need that, those words, if we want to reduce that a little bit. That's maybe a little redundant. Other than that, the rest of it,
But we have to go forward with what the committee.
well, that was just, as I wrote it up.
Maybe this could be at the joint meeting, since the board will be here, we'll just present this, the draft that, not this one, but whatever the changes are, we'll just present it at the October 6th meeting. That way everyone's in the same room, we can all see it, and if everyone's comfortable with it, we can move forward with the hearing maybe in November.
All right. And then that brings up the next question. Since we have it tabled right now for the facility, are you thinking that we'll go ahead and act on this as a recommend this to the board to be adopted before they actually pursue theirs?
The planning commission will make a recommendation based on this draft for the supervisors, and I expect that to be on the next agenda.
Okay, if that's your ruling, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Gregg.
I'm gonna take this off speaker so you can hear me a little more clearly. I would suggest with paragraph 4, which incidentally it appears that what I am looking at on page 21 of the packet does not have a paragraph 3, but in any event, I would use the word fencing shall be designed to blend in with surrounding screening and natural views. And likewise, you may want to consider that the fencing shall be installed inside the vegetative buffer. In other words, make those things mandatory rather than discretionary. That's my only comment.
Okay, Faye, thank you very much. Faye, you have a comment on that?
The reason why, yes, I understand what you're saying. If we say shall, that means that it always has to be inside the vegetative buffer.
That is correct.
And we were leaving that up to the placement in the special use permit, that one place only, where it can be outside or it can be inside, depending on what the siting is, whatever, that it doesn't always have to be.
Okay.
That's why we left it may instead of shall.
That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. We're going to leave that up to the applicant.
Okay.
And the planning commission's recommendation and the board's decision on whether the fencing is inside or outside the perimeter. Could be some parties might want to not look at the fencing, so that we were giving them an option, is what that was, what that is.
But I do think that the fencing shall be designed to blend in with surrounding screening and natural views.
We can change that.
We don't want pink fencing.
Yes.
No.
No, we don't. And we will do that.
We could,
Anybody else? Peter?
They, looking at paragraph 2, in the first sentence, in the first 2 sentences, particularly the first sentence where you talk about 100 feet to 300 feet, you don't articulate any standards. And in contrast, for example, to paragraph 4, where you do articulate some standards. And when, in the last sentence of paragraph 2, you do articulate some standards. I think it would be desirable to say something to create a standard, so when decisions are made, they're at least compliant with whatever general standard you may wish to articulate. As it stands now, who's to say whether it should be 100 feet or 300 feet? And on what basis would you make that determination?
you want me to address that?
Go ahead, man.
What we are thinking, what we, okay, I see why number 1's there because I do refer to it. Okay, sorry. Thinking you might be right. That's exactly what I maybe did do. The reason why we put the additional buffering may be required. That's if they change it to wherever the siting is, and it's all in the special use permit. The reason, I don't know what standard, we want to leave that a bit of an option. I'm not sure what standard, I mean, that is a standard of sorts, that there will be a setback in addition to the streams, and that it will consider in the special use permit the rural view shed and all the other things. That's the standard that I look at as being the standard. I'm not sure what else we need.
Well, you have, I think we have a gentleman in the audience who opposes this, as before. And if he brings an action to prevent a facility with only 100 feet buffer, how is a decision maker going to even address it when they don't articulate any kind of standard at all for making that determination?
Good point.
Can I add something?
Yes, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see adding on something like depending on specific site conditions, but I mean, essentially, anytime you're getting past 100-foot setback, where you said only 100% setback, that's already pretty extreme. When you're getting up to 300 feet, that's basically any parcel, not any specific parcel. You're talking about making the land pretty limited on its uses. So I think, I mean, even when I talked with Michael Yoder about it, and I mentioned the 300 feet, he was very surprised that, and felt that surely the 100 feet was more than adequate. Anybody who develops land can look at 300 feet, it's pretty extreme.
So if we took out the 300 feet and they just made it a solid 100 feet, there wouldn't be any necessarily standards required and be crystal clear. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Gardner?
I'm trying to remember what was on the last draft of Facing Around, but I'm pretty sure that in that there were some conditions specified about that when it would go to the 300 feet. Or their supervisor would have some input on that. I think that's part of the problem, is missing the final draft of what she was presenting. There was more in it, I remember that.
Thank you. We will get together on that to make sure we have issues addressing the standards that may be in the other draft that was sent the final one. When I get home, I will pull that up.
And
see
I-
what we have.
I have.
And then if we have to add, or maybe let's have another meeting to iron this out, then we'll do that. There's no big rush as far as I can tell to get this amendment into the ordinance, and if we have to delay it just to get it right, I think we should do that. Okay,
Actually, my original is this.
okay,
Sorry.
no problem. Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Did everybody get the draft that I sent out, that was, would be the formal type presentation that would be made to the board on this? Did you get it?
I did.
Okay. It looks like, the heading looks like this, okay? Everybody's seen it before. On the back of it, there's the signature box and everything, the planning commission. Did you see that? It was emailed to everybody, and stated we don't need any comments until tonight. If
Right.
you didn't get it, you didn't look, I don't know. Okay. Anyhow, we will get this straightened out. Okay. On this particular issue. Ready?
You want the date that it was sent? I can even give you that. But anyway,
Sorry. Any comments from the public on this? I figured. Please state your name again for the record.
Hey, everybody. I'm Alan Nichols. I reside at the one of the parcels to the south of the subject. Have a couple areas of concern in changing the setbacks. This is, of course, assuming that the board decides to approve the change of zoning. I hope they don't, but if they do, here we go. Before I talk about my two areas of concern, I just want to point out a couple things really quick. Namely, one quick excerpt from the county's comprehensive plan. It's the major strategy number 9. It's a single sentence with the major strategy to be to minimize encroachment upon residential neighborhoods, established communities, villages, schools, parks, and conservation areas when siting expansion. So according to our plan, I think that's something we need to keep in mind as we're considering setback zonings and the rest of it. And the next thing, if we assume that the board does approve the change of the zoning to M1, I think that we need to examine the change in setbacks in regard to the statement of intent of the zoning. Pulled it straight off of the Madison County website. I read it at the board meeting last time, but I think that it's pertinent that I read it again to get the language in here, to support the argument I'm about to make. So the statement of intent for the M1 district is to permit certain to permit certain light to medium industrial uses near a labor supply for which satisfactory evidence is presented that such uses, either by right or special use permit, here's the important bit, will not adversely affect any contiguous district by reason of, among other things, glare, sight, and contamination of water, air, and land. So this brings me to my areas of concern here. I went on the Madison GIS, which I know is not perfect, and I'm not a surveyor, but I did measure the area of the perimeter of the subject parcel. Almost a third of it's zoned residential. So with that in mind, in our comprehensive plan saying to minimize the encroachment on residential neighborhoods, and our statement of intent of the limited industrial district saying will not adversely affect the contiguous district, I think it's reasonable to state that the 300-foot buffer should remain in place for the parcel. At minimum, I mean, the compromise here is to be at least where it adjoins the residential district to minimize the impact of this new development here, of this, or this siting of this power plant. To minimize the adverse impact on this residential district, that setback should remain in place as it is. And I think it's unreasonable to change it in that area. So if we want to do it in the rest of it, the surrounding parcels are either zoned, on the west and to the north and the east, are either zoned the same or they're zoned A1. And you know, the uses are similar in those areas, but it's not to the south and to the southeast. I think that should remain the same.
Which is where you are.
I'm not the only parcel that's residential there,
I
sir.
understand.
So, but yes, I do have an interest in keeping it away. One of the reasons is I do have a concern about the liability for those that are adjacent to this parcel should the setbacks be reduced so far. And I'll give an example really quick. If we're only 100 feet away, there's more than a few trees that are every bit of 100 feet tall on the line. And it's not just on my side, it's on the northern boundary as well. If one of those trees falls over, that's on my side, perfect storm comes along and it knocks it over and it smacks one of these photovoltaic cells, who's responsible for the damage? I'm asking.
I don't know. That's a legal issue.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is because if it becomes one of my trees falls over and hits it, if it's my issue to be responsible for that, I don't really want it there because I don't want to have the issue of replacing a large photovoltaic cell that costs who knows how much. My insurance company probably doesn't want it either. So then to mitigate that risk, what do you have to do? You got to cut down the trees along the edges that are providing screening to prevent the adverse effect of sight of this facility. So either way, I get the short end of the stick. You leave them up there, you've got liability for potential damage to the site coming up. Or if you take them out, now you got to eat it on the site. And so either way, it's on a losing end. And I think that's not only reasonable for my end on the, you know, on the residential corridor there, but also on the northern end, there's trees there too. Are the fairgrounds owned by the county, I assume, because that's the border to the north. Am I correct? No, it's not. Okay, so be it. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the speaker. How many trees do you have that are in excess of 100 feet on your property line?
I do not know. I don't have that answer. I have not walked down there and measured every tree, but I can tell you that the length, the approximate length to the south and to the southeast of the property that has trees is about 2,200 linear feet, maybe more. So that's a long wooded perimeter there. So, and the, the total that I measured out is almost 4,000 linear feet along the border of this property, which I estimated to have a perimeter of just under 7,900 feet. So you got about half of it that's got trees along it. So, if the liability is on the applicant, which I'd have a hard time believing that it is, they can't, and they wouldn't be able to compel me to change my trees. I wouldn't imagine, it would be a problem that's enabled by the changing of this setback. The simple solution to solve this is just to leave it alone, especially along the residential area, which it should be left alone anyway. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable request. I don't see how you could argue this otherwise. And, the other argument that could be, greater or lesser, depending on how you look at it and how you rank importance, is if the setback is changed and we now have 100 feet from the surrounding parcels, let's say that something happens and one of these cells does break. Now, we all like to think of the solar energy as being clean, but the only thing that's clean about it is the sunlight. Been doing a little reading about these photovoltaic cells, and I know we're simply talking about setbacks, but I feel like this is important. It's going to tie in here, so bear with me a second. Used in the manufacture of these things and in what's remaining in these cells that are there, lead, arsenic, cadmium, silicon, all these things are in these cells. In fact, when they dismantle these things, if these things break, it takes a lot of special care to handle all these materials that are in there. You got Dark Run that runs right through the middle of this property, and there's a creek that runs through at the boundary of mine. So if something happens, tree falls, perfect storm, something lands on it, breaks these cells, You're going to get the rainwater to wash all this stuff in these creeks. You're going to mitigate some of that risk by keeping the setbacks removed. If you have this problem, if you do have an environmental problem that's caused by this, who's going to be responsible for the cleanup? We all assume it's going to be the company, but what if the company's not there? This company's been in business for 11 years. What if they just wash their hands of it and call bankruptcy? We're going to be left holding the stick.
That's why they post a bond.
Okay, so they post a bond. How much is their bond?
That will be determined at the time of the application.
Will the bond be set in a matter of the cost to cure the facility? And by cure, I mean to remove the structures and the cells when they leave. Will that be an amount that is what it would cost today or what it would cost with inflation in the future? And how is that going to be managed?
That's not my area of expertise, but I'm pretty sure the inflation issue is taken into consideration. Okay. Now,
Mr. Chairman, I do have one comment on that.
all right.
Oh, the bond is, we address it's either decommissioning and or any problems. That would be something that will be addressed in the special use. But we have, I think it's every 3 years, this is all legal. Not only do we require certain things that are done, but so does PJM and all the other people that are involved with these things. They just don't turn them loose. And from what I understand, and we learned this from visiting where there are 2 huge solar facilities, actually more than that, that they are constantly monitored. But it's reviewed every 3 years and it's adjusted accordingly, and the company knows that.
Okay.
And so we will have funds, and that's going to, you all deal with bonds all the time, so I'm not even going to get into that.
Okay, no, that's fair, and thank you for, Betsy, for explaining that. I appreciate it. So the bond money is certainly monitored, and that's good news. Do we know how often the structures and the facilities need to be monitored, and who is responsible for that?
It will, and I can answer some of it if you'd like for me to share what I learned
Well,
visiting, but if you don't want me to do it now, I don't have to.
no, tonight,
They would. And they're going to find out what I found out
all right. Well,
about the existing ones, so.
Let's wrap this up. A lot of these issues will come up when and if a special use permit was ever filed to establish a solar facility. Right now, we're dealing with the setback issue and the liability issue and that type of stuff.
Well,
Any other points you would like to
that's
make?
fair enough. I mean, I feel like I just need to wrap, Betsy, if I'm going to wrap it up,
Okay.
your comprehensive plan says that you're going to minimize the encroachment on residential neighborhoods. Reducing the setback is not going to minimize the encroachment on the near third of the perimeter of this property that's residential. So it's reasonable to just, at least just in that area, to not reduce the setback. The other point is that if the zoning change is approved, your M1 zoning says it will not adversely affect any contiguous district. And you cannot tell me that reducing the setbacks there doesn't impact the contiguous district. So,
And you are familiar with the Route 29 corridor study? I'm sure you read that.
of course.
Okay. Peter?
I think you're jumping the gun. You have good reason to do so, but I think our focus here is on the language of the ordinance, not on an application that has been taken. And if you have ideas about standards that ought to be incorporated in the ordinance, I think that would be a useful contribution for you to make.
And you are more than welcome to join the committee. It doesn't have to be made up of all planning commission members, but we have other people that join in. On occasion, you are more than welcome to join the committee.
I'm more than happy to share my opinion.
I understand. Thank you.
So, but thank you, Peter. I do believe that my comments were directed towards the ordinance in question tonight. I try not to get too much in the weeds. It happens though.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Pete?
I just got a few comments I want to make. If I'm understanding correctly, like with the creek, there's a setback time you go by the setbacks from the creek before the buffer even starts.
There are other setbacks other than the perimeter, correct?
And from what I understand from looking at this and walking out there and looking at it, down in the lower, I know exactly where this gentleman lives. And down in the lower corner there where he's speaking of all the trees, I don't see the solar farm being down in that lower corner. It's not where the intent is to put it. The intent is more up this way. And I don't think from where I understand and where I walked off, that he's got a tree on his property that would ever reach the boundary fence, let alone one of the panels.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the audience want to comment on that?
May I respond to Mr. Elliott?
Briefly, yes.
Mr. Elliott, I don't have the plan of where all the bells were going to go that was provided, but if recollection serves, they did show it as far down as they could go to that corner, that it was going to push it as far as they could go. That may not happen in practice when they get there, but that is what their plan showed, if numbers are.
Well, that's why they wanted the 100 foot toward 29, so they could pull it that way more.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the planning commission on this? If not, next item on the agenda. Potential rezoning of tax map 40-20, rezoning portion of tax map 40-20, R1 limited residential and R3 multiple family residential. Mr. Webb, there's nothing included in the package on that. I assume that goes back to the Palo Bannon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I know you've seen this site plan for a while. I just wanted to put on your radar, he's looking at November, whatever that first Wednesday is, for a joint hearing. So I guess in a month, we'll have more details. I guess like I stated in the email, with the number of TAPS EDUs that he has at 23, I don't know how, if you've got 47 units, how you make up that difference. That's my first question. Looking at, this is all zoned R1, all the way down Fishback Road, all the way, across, I believe, is all A1. But I know that Mr. Esch bought that 76 acres. And as I said in the email, he's bought in a rough plan for developing that he'd like to be like an R1. As far as his apartments go, it just seems to me that maybe including that front section that they kind of have reserved for commercial, I just think we could achieve a better layout if that's the way the planning commission, ultimately the board, want to go. From a land use planning perspective, I think it could be maybe a little more creative. I always like to see some green space and orient the buildings, maybe different, but when it comes to this whole corridor, Madison Holdings, it's Mr. Daniel and Mr. O'Bannon, they own R1 all the way down the road. And we have across the road, comp plan identifies this as a growth area. Jonathan came up with a good idea to maybe do some sort of a development committee and sit down and talk to different folks, and maybe every quarter do a round table sort of with, it can be anywhere from developers to realtors, county staff, folks here. I think it's a great idea. I thought the first thing we could do maybe, and I'm going to try to set this up, is maybe in 10 days or so, I want to get together with RSA, Mr. Esch, Madison Holdings, Mr. O'Bannon, maybe Mr. Daniel, a few other folks, and sit down and just basically say, we've got some folks here that want to develop property or see themselves developing this property. I mean, they've got funds that they could potentially contribute toward the sewer plant that's just down the hill. It just seems to me that I don't, I'm a planner, so I'm always trying to think about, how things are laid out, what the future looks like. I really think we have an opportunity here to create a corridor that's really one, can accommodate growth, two, could hopefully look really nice and can be done in a way that's uniformed as opposed to just doing one here, one there. Let's try to come up with a master plan that maybe Mr. O'Bannon, Mr. Esch, maybe RSA, we could all kind of be on the same page. And if they were willing to, as a proffer, to upgrade that plant in exchange for maybe density in an area where it just seems to me to be would be a logical growth area, maybe that could be a win for everybody. So my plan is to try to put together a meeting with those folks in RSA, not this Monday, but the 27th September. I mean, everyone would be welcome to attend, but really just sit down and get RSA and get a conversation going with them. And if we need to ask Mr. O'Bannon to hold on a little bit until we can get some things, I think he's totally willing to sit and listen and contribute whatever they might have to offer. But there's quite a bit of land, and this area really could accommodate growth for a long time for Madison. But we always say with this, you get one opportunity, from a planning perspective. And if we set the table up front that we really want to plan it out, we want to think of a layout, and, green space and maybe pedestrian accommodations and things like that. We could plan something here that maybe long term could funnel a lot of urban growth. They call the UDA that the town has talked about. This would just be a perfect area for the community, and that would take pressure off the rural areas for subdivisions, things like that, and maybe in the long run.
So these are all, we don't expect this to be on the agenda anytime soon.
Well,
We want to
he
do all this background
yeah.
research.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, they want to come. Paul wants to come on the 27th and talk to get RSA in here, and again, Mr. Esch, and see if there's something that they could potentially put forth. Hard improvements maybe to that plant for the opportunity to increase density in this area.
Certainly planning ahead.
How many steps did you say you already have?
Well, he has 23.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is RSA like it is in Northern Virginia, you can put two houses to the tap, or you're going to have to allow one to the tap? Because in Northern Virginia, they will allow you to put two houses, sometimes three, to the same tap. And that's why I figured he's got 23, and why he's asking for 47. He's planning on doing two houses to the tap.
He's already got 22 for the apartments, because he's using one.
That's right.
Mini storage unit. Using one there, so that puts a bathroom in that office.
Yeah, my understanding is one tap, one EDU is one connection. That's generally, but I could be wrong. Clay, do you know? That's what I was told, that it's parcel specific, which it seems it's not totally unusual. Yeah, I think you answered it right. It's a little unusual. I mean, usually they say we have this much capacity. We can offer this many connections. So
Is RSA on these taps?
It's for Bannon on the tap. I thought I was with them the understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but when Carl was looking at putting all the assisted living things in out there, we can be one tap to two apartments. And I could be wrong about that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I asked Ken Clemens that question yesterday morning. And he's going to be here tomorrow at 2 for me. But yeah, he said it's sort of a formula depending on how many bedrooms that are in the apartment. You could get up to 2 apartments for one tap. But he goes, that's not a question I can really answer without seeing what it is. But yeah, it's possible to have multiple apartments on a tap.
Well, I've plumbed a pile of apartments, and we've had 8 and 16 units,
And usually on an 8-unit building, we'll have one sewer tap for 4 apartments. On the 16, we'll have 4. Because you don't have one tap for each apartment. So with that in mind, his 22 EDUs would suffice for these 8 apartment units.
Okay.
If RSA agrees with it.
And all this stuff is going to be ironed out down the road right now. We're just looking at the potential rezoning, right?
That's right.
Any comments, any questions from Mr. Webb on this?
I have one.
All right.
Actually, 2 comments. I agree with you about the idea of looking at, I think what several months ago, this was brought up about mixed use zoning. This looks like a place we might want to look at that instead of going piecemeal like they're doing right now.
Yep. I called it master plan, but yeah.
Anyway, I think that's a good idea. Look at some overall pictures because he's still got, as you say, there's a lot of land here that he still owns. And, is he going to say, all right, 6 months from now, I want to rezone this R1 to R3 so I can put another set of apartments in? The other comment, some time ago, we had a presentation by RSA. And if I remember correctly, the water supply in Madison, they've got abundance, but they're almost at their maximum for discharge into that waterway from the treatment plant. So there's not going to be room for expansion there, which is one of the things you mentioned they might be willing to do. But it sounded to me from what the man from RSA told us that the Madison treatment plant is pretty much at their maximum discharge.
Even if it
Is
was,
that,
to the level,
is,
to the level of taps that are available currently. They are not, since used Palo Abandon's 23, they are figuring those at their capacity of affluent way or discharge into the creek when they come to fruition.
Yeah.
There is capacity, but not available taps.
Because there's a lot of taps out there, just like Clay said, that are owned by people that can be used. Once you get call-off's got 25.
No, he's got 43.
So,
43.
I guess
We
what-
have
okay.
one.
Yeah.
all right,
what I-
all of this is figured into the capacity of RSA, the existing taps, whether they're being used or not.
right. I guess
Okay.
my question,
Thank you.
what I want to find out when we maybe get together is
All right.
if there was is funds put toward improving that facility, could it then discharge more?
Okay. Sounds like we've got a ways to go on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments on that rezoning? If not, moving on. Item C, temporary events and Chapter 4 amusement entertainment ordinance. That was assigned to Peter Work and his business committee. Peter has drafted up some language on several issues here that the board asked us to look at. Some of them are simple, some of them are not so simple. Peter, you're on.
Okay. I think you all remember at the August 26th meeting that Mike assigned to the business committee the task of studying the various event-related ordinances in the county. The committee consists of myself, Steve Carpenter, Nan Coppage, Danny Krigler. Although he's not a member of the committee, Mike Moscow participated fully in all the work we've done since the August 26th meeting. We met twice in person in that period. We exchanged multiple written communications. We prepared the September 11 memo, which is in your packet. And also, I prepared the 2 short follow-ups to that September 11 memo, which are also in the packet. The existing event-related ordinances that we looked at are the brief activities ordinance, which is in Article 14.4, 14-4 last sentence, which permits without a special use permit and without regard to lot size and number of attendees, activities that are, quote, consistent with, close quote, by right and special activities permitted in the subject zoning district and are, quote, conducted for no more than a cumulative 15 days in any calendar year. We also considered the event venue ordinance, which is in Article 14-18, which permits as special uses in areas zoned A1 and C1, the creation and operation of so-called event venues on properties of at least 10 acres or more. We considered a 1978 ordinance called mysteriously the Outdoor Musical and Entertainment Festivals Ordinance, which requires the Board of Supervisors issued permits for gatherings of individuals open to the public for purposes of listening to or participating in entertainment, which consists primarily of musical renditions conducted in open spaces and not within an enclosed structure. And finally, we considered a draft amendment to that permitting ordinance that Ligon prepared. I don't know, Ligon, how long ago you prepared it, but I know that it has, the board has considered it, but not taken any action on it. And based on our study of these event-related ordinances, we proposed that the Planning Commission consider recommending to the board that it take the following actions with regard to the brief activities ordinance and the 1978 outdoor musical and entertainment festivals ordinance. In response to a question raised by Mike Moscow, we have determined that the 78 ordinance remains in effect. I think Mike's expectation for tonight is that we discuss the committee's recommendations, but hold off in making any decisions about what we want to do vis-a-vis the board until our next workshop meeting. So commission members will have an opportunity to study the issues on their own and think about what they want to do. So let's start with the brief activities ordinance. You'll recall that the board adopted the current version of that ordinance before it adopted the event venue ordinance and before it later reduced the 100-acre threshold for event venues to a minimum of 10 acres. Prior to the board's adoption of the brief activities ordinance, there was a definition of brief activities in the zoning ordinances, but there was no provision explicitly authorizing such activities. Given the significant board actions in creating and amending the event venue ordinance after it had adopted the brief activities ordinance, the business committee believes that the brief activities ordinance is now unnecessary and undesirable, and that the board should eliminate it. It's our view that large-scale events should not be held on properties consisting of as few as 10 acres, consisting of fewer than 10 acres, and they should not be permitted for up to 15 days in a given year without a special use permit. If the Planning Commission as a whole disagrees with the committee's recommendation that we urge the board to eliminate the brief activities ordinance, the committee suggests that the ordinance be amended to read as stated in the draft I circulated to all of you this morning, and that is also in your packet. And that draft states, a special use permit shall not be required for brief and public and private event activities that are, one, conducted on properties of 10 or more acres in A1 and C1 zoning districts. Two, consistent with by right and special use activities permitted in the subject district. Three, anticipated and likely to attract no more than 300 daily attendees and no more than 500 total attendees in any calendar year. And finally, four, conducted on no more than 2 consecutive days and no more than a cumulative total of 4 total days in any calendar year. So that's the brief activities ordinance and what the committee has concluded based on our study. Now let's turn to the notice and permitting requirements under that fancy titled 1978 ordinance. As I mentioned, Ligon has prepared a red line of that ordinance. I think it has been considered by the board. And the Planning Commission through, or I should say the board through Mike Moscow, has asked the Planning Commission for its thoughts on both the 78 ordinance and on Ligon's suggested amendments to that ordinance. In response to the board's request, the Business Committee has drafted an ordinance that differs rather markedly from the 1978 ordinance and from Ligon's red line version. The most significant changes reflected in our draft include the following. We have expanded the definition of events for which permits must be obtained to encompass gatherings of individuals, with certain exceptions, that are private as well as public, non-fee based as well as fee-based, and held for any purpose not limited to musical entertainment. Second, we have explicitly limited the ordinance to large-scale events, defined in our draft as events anticipated and likely to attract 300 or more daily attendees. Three, we have excluded events sponsored and conducted by county governmental and educational entities, by large private schools such as Woodbury Forest, and by established full-time business entities such as Plow and Hearth. Four, we have refined what permit applications must include in the way of information about the planned event. Five, we have provided the Board of Supervisors shall establish an application fee consistent with the county's existing fee schedules. Currently, there is no fee required, although some of these applications, I understand, involve a fair amount of work on the part of Ligon's office. 6, we have made the zoning administrator the principal decision maker in lieu of the board, and we have made the zoning administrator's decisions appealable to the county's administrator, who shall have the authority to issue a final administrative decision. 7, we have included provisions addressing how far in advance of a proposed event an application must be submitted, and how soon after receiving an application the zoning administrator must grant or deny it. And finally, 8, we have provided for permit revocations and for fines issued by the county sheriff in the event of material violations of the terms of a permit. So that's a quick summary of our recommendations based on roughly 3 weeks of study. I'm sure that members of the commission will have thoughts on it. We welcome those thoughts. First, why don't we start with members of the business committee for any thoughts they may have that they want to address.
Peter, you want to hone in on one specific issue like this brief activities, 15 days a year? You want to try to focus on that first without jumping around, or?
Okay.
All right.
Brief activities.
Right. The presently Article 14-4, standards for issuance of special use permit. That's the one which we did a couple years ago. And on that, it says special use permit shall not be required for any brief activity in a given zoning district that is R1 consistent with by right or special use activities permitted in the districts, and 2, conducted for no more than 15 days a year. When we did that, I thought we were talking about yard sales, but apparently this to me is wide open, and based on that, anybody can do pretty much whatever they want to. They could have a brief activity with 2,000 people or whatever. So we're trying to, in the interest of public safety, narrow that down somewhat. Or, as Peter said, propose just totally eliminate it out of the ordinance. So you're asking for comments on those?
Yeah,
First,
okay. Let's start with that. And why don't we start with members of the committee?
Okay.
Steve, Danny?
Nan is not here.
What?
Yeah.
I am here.
No, I said Nan is not here,
Oh.
not Danny.
Thought you said Dan. Well, to be quite honest with you, Peter, I'd like some time to read it and decipher some of it. I haven't had that opportunity. I apologize for not being at the committee meetings. You had my wrong email address. I wasn't aware of them.
Okay.
But I would like some more time before we really.
Yeah,
get into it.
and I'm sure other members of the commission would like more time, and that's why we don't really suggest that any action be taken on these suggestions until the next workshop, and by that time, everybody will have had a chance to read and think about these things. Steve, do you have thoughts?
Basically, I agree with if we work through the rest of this that we've been looking at, there shouldn't be a need any longer for this little kind of exemption thing that the brief and seasonal activities. So, if we can get the event permit ordinance correctly set up and coordinated with the event venue ordinance, then there should be no necessity for this additional brief activities thing.
It seems to be that there is a need somewhat, but it needs to be restricted. Because we don't want somebody to come in here and have to file a special use permit, for example, to just have a yard sale. For example, I think that's
right.
I don't even know that is mentioned in the ordinance at this time. So I think that there should be something there for these little off the wall things that somebody might decide to do without going through the whole formality of filing this application. The question is, what should those be and how should that be regulated? So.
I have a question for y'all. When you guys redid this, we've been seasonal and it took forever to redid it. You grandfathered in people who were using the other one. So you have venues right now that are running off of the old one. So if you get rid of that completely, is that going to screw them to where all of their weddings have to get an S&P?
I would think if they are grandfathered in, they are grandfathered in.
That's what I was
But
We can't change that.
but we need advice from Sean Gregg on what grandfathered in means, because I've observed in discussions in this room over time that different people have much different ideas about what is grandfathered and what is not. And I frankly think that if the county issues an ordinance and then takes it away, if somebody hasn't made it an investment of a sizable nature, that there shouldn't be any grandfather rights.
Mr. Work, if I might, or Mr. Chairman, if I could comment on Mr. Work's remark. I had distributed a memorandum on this issue to the Planning Commission about 2 years ago, I believe. Regrettably, I do not have access to that now. I can certainly get that to the members of the Planning Commission by Wednesday of next week after I've recovered from my current treatment. I apologize I did not have it immediately available, but I will find those materials and refresh the members of the Planning Commission. What I would propose, Mr. Chairman, is that I would send it to you and you could distribute it to the members of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. That would be great. Appreciate that. Okay.
I guess this wouldn't kick in if you're doing less than 300 people. And that's, yeah.
Shall we go on to
Yes.
the permitting?
Wait a minute.
Pete, you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't know the exact verbiage that we need to use yet, but I'm not for getting rid of this 10 acres. Why do we always want to try to find a way where the little guys out here beside the road trying to sell some tomatoes to make a living or trying to sell some pumpkins to make a living? We're not here to try to hurt that guy. Now, I don't know the right answer for this, but we're here to make sure that guy is okay too. Because there's a lot of those little places in Madison County, and those guys, they need to make a living just like the rest of us do. And I don't know the answer to it, Peter. I don't know the verbiage for it, but I'm not willing to get rid of that because it hurts people.
Can I comment?
Well, I think that's a good point, Pete, and we can certainly craft something to protect those small events, and we'll try to do that.
Megan?
So I think it's really kind of comes down to the event venues, the weddings and the different, they're all, it's just a big thing nowadays. When I came aware of I guess we call it the brief and seasonal use, I didn't quite understand it at first. And as I have practiced it and worked with folks doing events in the community, and the kind of, just, I thought it was an unusual person. I've never heard of this before. And then in practice, I found to be very useful, to be lenient yet kind of reasonable, that if you were doing 15 or less, we there have been a couple of venues that say, we're only going to do, 8 or 9 a year weddings, and they're large, like that one up on North 29 across from Prince Michelle is a good example. And, it's definitely different, but I just would, consider it strongly. It is unusual, but I again, from my perspective, been dealing with people that want to do events, and it's something that people, entrepreneurs, I guess, appreciate and say it's nice that Madison, that you have sort of an ordinance here that allows people to be small and brief if they don't have to go through as much red tape. So for what it's worth, the few people that have taken sort of advantage of this, I think have been folks that you probably would have issued a special use permit anyway, but so sure. I mean, it is different, and I can understand that.
But the problem here is we have a conflict between this and this chapter 4 that we're trying to clean up a little bit. What's going on here in Article 4-4 and what we're saying over there in chapter 4, which we're trying to, the board is trying to get a rewrite on. So we got to figure out how to get these little items that you're talking about and allow those without them going through all the hoops for a big activity. At least I think that's where we are. Mr. Yao?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree. I looked at some of this stuff this afternoon before it came down here, and I specifically just took one 3-2-8. It's a special use permit for a temporary wayside stand. That is exactly what Pete's talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we put it in there for the guy that's going to set up on the long side of the road during Graves' apple harvest and sell his wares on the side of the road. So I am not in favor of getting rid of brief and seasonal ordinance. And I think we need to be aware that there's very much of a difference between events and event venues. I mean, you look at the ordinance on event venues and you look through it and you're talking about building heights and lodging and dining facilities and addition of land to the event venue, varieties of buildings and land improvements, considering location of existing and new land features and improvements. That's event venue stuff.
I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, this 14.4 can allow a multitude of things without any regulation or oversight or putting no concern for public safety, as the Chapter 4 ordinance currently is trying to cover.
Just following up on that, Cardi, the brief activities ordinance is currently written would permit, as Mike said, everything that could be done on an event venue, with hundreds or thousands of people on properties that may be 1 acre. Now, it seems to me clear that we don't want that. And we've got to find a way to prevent that. My own view is, if you want to do something and you meet the standards of the event venue ordinance, get a special use permit. And we're talking about 15 days a year under the brief activities ordinance. I think it'll be a long time before Crescent Ray ever has 15 large-scale events.
I guess the way I look at it is if you're an event venue and you're taking the brief and seasonal exemption and doing 15 or less, but if you have an event that's larger than 300 people, then you're going to come and get your permit. That, you know, so just because you're taking the brief and seasonal exemption, and again, really this is all about event venues. You're taking the seasonal brief exemption, you're still required to come in and get, I mean, it's like with graves. I mean, I guess you call them an event venue, they still can't come in and get through the 1978
You
ordinance.
wouldn't, Liggett, I really disagree with you, because if we're talking about a wayside stand, the threshold requiring a permit is 300 anticipated and likely daily participants. And I think it'd be a very fortunate wayside stand that had 300 people come by and buy tomatoes on a given day.
Yeah. I would say if you're a wayside stand, if you're doing it more than 15 days out of the year, then you come. We're going to be set up for 3 months in the summer. We're going to go get a special use permit. That's the way I would interpret it. And I will just say, just on this, I think what you've written for temporary events is very good. I think it's better than what I wrote. The only from an administrating standpoint, I just think you should private events that people aren't charging anyone. They're not, it's your daughter's wedding or whatnot.
Why
That-
is an
that- that
event,
would be-
a private event with, say, 1,000 people, any different from a public event with 1,000 people?
Well, I would say
in
you're,
terms of impact on neighbors.
well, you're only doing it one time. I mean, or occasionally on a very rare. Whereas
But it's
do it up
still,
to
it's
50
still,
times a
there's
year.
still a public safety issue involved here with that. And we think that all of the appropriate county agencies should be notified of something like that through an application process.
Fair enough. And the only other comment I would make is if it's going to be, you say 300 people or more, okay, fair enough. That's a conversation you can have, private versus fee-based. But to me, if it's a really large scale event, Crest Ray wants to throw a 3-day lock-in festival like they do down in Nelson with 10,000 people. I think that should be something that I can take the application and say the board needs to approve this. We'll get everything together. And that's what I had put in my sort of markup. So that would be my only two comments is, the private, truly private events versus fee-based events. And the second thing is to make some sort of an ability for the application for, I'm not talking about a wedding, we're talking about something very significant, which I don't anticipate we'll necessarily have, but that's something that could be reviewed ultimately by the board.
Liggett, I think the most desirable approach for getting the benefit of your experience on this is for the committee to meet with you as we have done once on this subject and sit down and go through the specifics.
Yeah.
I think we can work out something that.
And the last thing is with Crest Array that, they're doing that event on the 25th, expecting 500 or more people. They follow the 78 ordinance, which what I proposed really goes above and beyond the red marked up one, the 78 ordinance. And they submitted a packet based on what I had sort of proposed. And it was really a pretty good application, pretty thorough. It was easy to understand. They gave their tickets, they showed, and we sent it around. They're all set to go. So it actually worked pretty well. But anyway, those are my comments on it.
Cardi, the same would go for you and any other member of the board that would like to meet with us and express their views and see if we can accommodate them.
Yeah, I would have done it last time, so my email, we were having a few issues, right, Bruce? So I didn't get it until.
But the bottom line on this one, this particular 14.4 on this brief and uh, occasional for 15 days a year, it seems to me that it does leave things wide open. And if we're just talking about small events here, like roadside stands or yard sales or whatever, then we should narrow it down to that in the interest of protecting the public and welfare here. So we need some input from people on how to do that particular thing for these so-called small events or whatever. And I don't know that I know we're in Peter's draft, it's between 300 and 500. That seemed like a lot of people to me. But that was all out here for discussion purposes, I think. But yeah, I really think we need to do something to tighten up this 15-day brief thing, because it is wide open, and you could do something here, like Peter said, with 1,000 people. I don't know that they would have to come in and file for that, an application for that. It doesn't say anything there about it. But
I think when I wrote the letter to the guy, and sorry to interrupt you, but the guy that was using the brief and seasonal, I pointed out that if he had an event that was over a certain size, that he would still need to come in and get that temporary event. So, I think we could have.
I would agree with that. Any roadside event above a certain threshold should have to get a permit.
But we all agree that something needs to be rewritten here to clarify this 15-day a year deal. And what that is, we don't really have a clear picture. So if anybody has any input, Peter would sure appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Lagan, and set up a time with Cardi as well. And other Clay, if you're interested in meeting with us, we'd be happy to do so.
And I'll be happy to throw something against the wall and see what you think.
That's what we're looking for.
Mr. Chairman, could I make one other comment?
Yes, Faye?
Just about, I don't know what I'm looking at, this I zeroed in on, and I'm looking at the one, Peter, this one from September 11th, and I'm looking at the last one, the violations. And you're saying that it's determined by the county sheriff. Have you talked to the sheriff yet? Or is this common? Is this what we do? And
we haven't talked to the sheriff.
We're jumping.
And we would need to talk to the sheriff.
And especially the fine amount.
We're
and all
jumping
that.
ahead now.
Well, I know that,
Okay.
but if we're going to talk about it, might as well bring it up now.
Yeah, but let's wait till we get to that part.
I might not be there, so now you know.
You'll be here. All right, Peter, sorry. So we will, you will wait for additional, you'll have another meeting on that and see what we can come up with. Okay.
Another meeting or multiple meetings, depending
Yeah.
on who's interested in meeting with us. But we'll reach out.
Yes, Francois.
I would like to be at that.
More than welcome. Okay. Add her to the committee, Peter.
You bet. I'm glad to have you. That's right.
You're looking to
What-
advertise it.
Well,
It will be advertised.
okay, but could you just send us an email to all of us? Because if you don't specifically look at the website, you wouldn't know necessarily. Just send us an email for any of our meetings. I'd be glad to have that happen anytime I have a committee meeting.
To
As
do
a
what,
courtesy to all the planning commission members. Do we all get it when it's going to be meeting?
Not necessarily, but we could do that.
I would request that so that I know, because I don't check the website and check what's being advertised every day for sure.
Okay.
Not too much.
Well, we have used Cardi's
Hey,
very
busy,
capable
busy.
assistant, April Clements, to give notice of our meetings.
So in the future, when a committee is having a committee meeting, okay, that committee chairman will also CC all the remaining members of the planning commission. So everybody knows it is going on.
Thank you.
Okay. That'll be the process from now on.
But you're on our committee now, right?
Just for this
All right, let's move on. Where are we?
again.
Um, And does anyone have specific comments on the notice and permitting provisions that we've suggested?
Everybody did read that before the meeting, right?
If not, and when you get around to reading it, we would be happy to speak with any members of the commission or anyone else.
Okay, we're talking about the application process.
Right.
Okay. I think what we have here is something that's pretty clear cut as far as redoing the chapter 4 provisions of the ordinance. What I suggested to Peter and his committee is on this application, instead of putting all of these things in here that you have to do or whatever, is the application itself already covers a lot of stuff that would be required for the party, the applicant, to do when they submit the application. So, and if that application is part of the county ordinance, then to me that pretty much covers everything. So my suggestion was that that form be made part of the county ordinance by reference and a form number. Also, one of the other suggestions that was made is that at the same time that those applications are submitted, that the other pertinent departments in the county receive a copy, so that like the fire department, sheriff's department, etc., so they know right off what is coming, and then they can provide feedback immediately to Ligon and his department, and that would speed the process up considerably. Instead of having to send that and then ask them for comments, if they knew that they had to provide input immediately, that would speed the process up.
I think the way we've envisioned it is that Ligon would get the application probably electronically, and you would distribute it to the various county officials electronically, asking them for their input. And that the form that Mike is talking about would contain all of the information that is required for a given application.
Just like the one Barbara Miller filled out recently. Okay. All right. And everybody on the planning commission should look at that to see if there needs to be any additions or whatever requirements.
Yes.
Beg your pardon?
No, but I just buzzed. I did. I'm developing some nausea. So if there's something I can get for that, that would be great.
Apologize later for that. Okay. Where are we? Any other comments on this proposal? Everyone, please, when this stuff is circulated around, please read it before the meeting, so when you get here,
Yeah, Mike, can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, got disconnected.
90 minutes. But anyway.
All
right. Come on.
we're back on. Okay. Any other comments on this proposed ordinance? Please read it before you come to the meeting so that you know what's going on. You can't sit here and read this stuff after you get to the meeting.
I feel like I read the first one and then got another one that said disregard the first one, read this one, and I was like, all right.
Okay. I'm not saying it's easy.
Going on.
That's just part of the job. Okay.
That's what I pay you the bucks.
I would comment on the same thing Mike said. Faye just say about that last part right there. I don't think that the sheriff can react to that. I think that that's a zoning issue and that has to go to court and zoning. And ask Sean that, but. Well, that was strictly, all I'm talking about is just to notify them that this is going to happen so that they can be on board when the decision is made by the county. Talking about the $1,000 fine. Oh, I'm not, that's, so we're, okay. It's up to
It's
them.
part of what's in here.
I understand.
Okay. We done with that, Peter?
Have all of that.
Thank you.
We have our marching orders.
Okay. All right, I think that covers everything on our agenda for tonight. If anybody has any more comments from the planning commission? Any comments from the public? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn? I got a first.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Hey.
Thank you.
Nay.